The first phase of Dragonsong's Reprise Ultimate sees the raid face off against two bosses, Sir Adelphel, the Paladin, and Sir Grano, the Warrior. I will refer to them as the Paladin and the Warrior throughout this guide. Which tank takes which bosses up to your raid, but they do have some different responsibilities throughout the encounter. We place our markers very deliberately to assist in resolving two mechanics, which we'll discuss as we get to. We start by pulling the bosses near the center of the arena, practically on top of one another. The Paladin will immediately cast Holiest of Holy, a massive damage raid-wide AoE. I recommend focusing most of your damage on the Paladin as they spend much of the phase untargetable. Shortly thereafter, the Warrior casts Empty Dimension, while a Tether pops out of the Paladin. Empty Dimension is a Dynamo AoE, striking the entire arena save for a small circle around the Warrior. While this casts, one of the tanks should pick up the Tether and take it off to the side. When the Dynamo resolves, the tethered player will be targeted with a series of tank busters that cleave in a conal pattern. While there is more to know about this tank buster, it isn't relevant during Phase 1. The tethered tank should use an invulnerability cooldown while the remaining 7 players stack south. As the tank buster resolves, an untargetable Sir Cherubert casts Heavensblaze on one of the 7 remaining party members. This is a small radius, high damage stack that will likely be lethal if all 7 players aren't stacked. The Warrior will jump to the center of the arena before the Paladin becomes untargetable. 4 random players will receive orange markers over their head, indicating they will be targeted by column AoEs. One of the remaining 4 players will be targeted by a massive 160-degree shared damage cleave. The 4 orange marker players spread to the markers on the north half of the arena. At the end of the Hyperdimensional slash cast, each will be targeted by a column AoE that deals high damage and drops a portal where it collides with the arena edge. If 2 of these portals are too close together, they will explode and wipe the raid. While they spread, the remaining 4 players stack on the south side of the boss to share the cleave. After the first AoE is resolved, the remaining 4 players are targeted with columns. These players spread to the south markers while the original 4 stack north to share the second split damage cleave. After resolving both sets of AoEs, the Paladin will appear on the arena edge at one of the 4 cardinals, while the Warrior begins casting Faith Unmoving, a knockback from his position. This knockback can be immune with Surecast and Arm's Length, or players can carefully knock to the wall. Our goal here is to get knocked or moved to the opposite side of the Paladin. Moving too close to any of the 8 portals dropped by the Hyperdimensional slashes will result in a player getting zapped to a sudden death, so we must do this cautiously, especially if we don't immune the knockback. Immediately after the knockback, the Paladin casts another Holiest of Holy Raidwide before dashing in a Z pattern. Getting hit by these dashes will result in death, and a trail of orbs will also be left behind which explode in massive circle AoEs. Furthermore, if the Paladin collides with a portal, it will detonate and the raid will die. We survive this onslaught using a simple method. Notice these phantom lines on the arena floor. One of these points will be our safe spot. Whichever side the Paladin dashes to first is the side we move to. If you get knocked back, be sure to take a few steps towards the center of the arena before moving to this point to avoid the portals. As soon as the orbs directly in front of us detonate, the Paladin tank moves away from the party. After a few seconds, the Paladin will dive onto their head, dealing massive damage in a circle around the tank. We once again use an invulnerability cooldown here. After the Paladin returns, the portals will fade from the battlefield. Immediately after becoming targetable, the Paladin casts its first Holiest Hallowing. This is an interruptible cast that will heal both bosses an enormous amount of health, and we have the Paladin tank handle this first interrupt. After the interrupt, we position both bosses and the raid in the very center of the arena. 4 sets of chains will come out, with players that have matching symbols being tethered to one another. While these chains appear, the Warrior once again casts Faith Unmoving. Our goal is to get knocked back towards the marker with a color corresponding to our symbol. Red circles knock back to the red markers, green triangles knock back to the yellow markers, purple squares to purple markers, and blue crosses to blue markers. As our chains break, Cherubert finishes a cast of Heavensflame, targeting all party members with high damage circle AoEs. Any players too close to one another will be executed. Immediately following Heavensflame, the Paladin casts its second Holiest Hallowing. We have our physical range DPS handle this second interrupt. This is followed by another Holiest of Holy Raidwide. As the Holiest of Holy resolves, the Warrior casts either another Empty Dimension Dynamo or Full Dimension, a small point-blank circle AoE around itself. Pay attention to the cast name and adjust accordingly. We mark the Warrior to help the raid tell the bosses apart for this. The Paladin will again attempt to cast Holiest Hallowing, and for this third and final cast, we once again have the Paladin tank interrupt it. The Paladin will deliver one final Holiest of Holy. Afterwards, the Paladin casts Brightblade Steel, while the Warrior casts the Bull's Steel. If either of these casts finishes, they will heal to full, become invulnerable, and delete the raid. Additionally, as soon as one of the bosses dies, the other will begin this cast, demanding they be killed at the same time. Be sure to even out their health pools as you finish them. If successfully defeated, the party will be fettered inside of a circle of death, and Cherubert will be targetable, casting Pure of Heart. Pure of Heart will deal damage based on Cherubert's HP at the end of the cast, and is difficult to survive at values above around 25%. Outside the circle, our dear comrade will once again make the ultimate sacrifice, that we might live to fight another day. As Pure of Heart progresses, we have the party stack in the center of the circle at max melee range, while the two tanks move to the opposite side of Cherubert to bait two proximity conal AoEs away from the party. These cones inflict players hit with a 6-second Skyblind debuff. When this debuff falls off, their location will be recorded, and a few seconds later a circle AoE will strike that recorded position. This process repeats 3 more times. After baiting their conal AoEs, the tanks move to the left side of the boss while the ranged DPS move in to bait the second set of cones. Once the tanks' debuffs fall off, they rejoin the raid at the max melee stack to avoid the circle AoEs their debuffs placed. After baiting their cleaves, the ranged DPS move to the right side of the boss to drop their Skyblind circles, before rejoining the stack while the melee DPS move in to bait the third set of cleaves. The melee then drop their Skyblind circles on the left side of the boss, while the healers move in to bait the fourth and final set of cleaves, before dropping their puddles on the right. As long as at least one player survives Pure of Heart, the encounter will progress to Phase 2, and Thordan will appear, and, so long as he is pulled before everyone dies, the raid will be granted a checkpoint to this stage for the remainder of the lockout. Having survived the onslaught, the encounter continues against Thordan, with Haurchefant once again escaping the rescue of the Warriors of Light. Unless...
Counter.
Healer switch.
Don't get gazed. Rescue.
Oh, we did it!
Yay.
I got Prey at the same time.
Roscoe West, please.
Gotcha.